Hi, I'm Pam Fox at pamfox.org, and in today's video I'm in the hiatal hernia support group. If you have a hiatal hernia and you don't already belong to the hiatal hernia support group, that is the name of it, hiatal hernia support, here on Facebook. So you can do a search for that and request to join. I'm certainly not advocating that it replace professional medical supervision of your hiatal hernia. But there's a lot of good information in there. It is a support group, so it's good to hear what other, you can ask questions, you can see what other people are enduring, what other people are experiencing, what's working for people, what's not working for people in specific situations. So, excuse me, I'm just making sure that we've got a good connection. So, hi Fran. Okay, so today's question comes from Rachel. And so if you are in the hiatal hernia support group, I like to come in here. I actually haven't shared it yet, so I'm not even in the group, but I will share it as soon as I'm done. And answer questions about once or twice a month or so. And I'd like to do that more often. I've meant to. Last week I injured my forehead with a big scratch and I didn't want to come on because I was embarrassed. But I get a lot of emails, a lot of messages, and a variety of questions, and it's just easier for me to come into the group and answer a question like this that's a commonly asked question and reach a broader audience than to answer these. I try to answer all of my emails and my messages, but I know I don't get to them all. And I apologize for that if you have sent me a question and I haven't responded to it. Make sure if you guys do send questions, I prefer that you do it. You can tag me in the hiatal hernia support group. You can put a question under this video and I will most likely get to that within 24 to 48 hours. But make sure you make your questions specific. Like a lot of times people will kind of give me a life history and then say, what are your thoughts? And I'm not really quite sure what it is you're looking for. And I don't have time to just, dive in and share all of my thoughts on your life history. So be specific about what your question is if you have a question for me. Okay, so Rachel, her comment was, does anyone else go from completely fine to completely starving nearly instantly with shaking and lightheaded, etc.? I have had a ton of symptoms recently and I'm wondering if anyone else experienced this. And I don't know how old Rachel is. She looks quite young in her photo, if that's her photo. I don't know the size of her hiatal hernia. I don't know what her diet's like. So there's not a lot of information here, but this is a common symptom with hiatal hernia. This feeling of, I just ate and all of a sudden I'm starving. Lightheadedness and shaking are also typical. I mean, typical is a bad word because you can take 100 people with hiatal hernia and they have symptoms all over the board. They're not all going to have the same symptoms. And so Rachel, and there's a lot of actually good information in the feed under your question. Liam mentions hypoglycemia. Do you crave sugar a ton? So there could be other things going on. It may or may not be hiatal hernia related, but there's a good chance that it is. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about why that is, because I feel very strongly that knowledge is power. And the better you are able to understand your hiatal hernia, the more equipped you will be at reversing it naturally, doing the things that it takes to reverse it naturally. So yeah, I don't know what your diet is, Rachel, but obviously having feeling starving, having cravings, shaking, lightheadedness, you may not, I mean, I don't know what you're eating. If glucose is the body's number one preferred fuel source, and so if you're on one of these kind of trendy low carbohydrate diets where you're minimizing fruit and rice and potatoes and those kinds of things, foods that the body really, in my opinion, needs in order to reach caloric needs, to reach nutritional needs, and to feel adequately satisfied. So that's one thing. I mean, I don't know what your diet is, so that's certainly something to look at. You know, I don't know where you're at with your blood sugar and those kinds of things. So once you've ruled out that and you know that your diet is in a good place, then we can start to look at why the hiatal hernia can cause these symptoms that you're experiencing. So, Casey mentioned, Casey's response to your question was that the stomach moves in all different positions, and our vagus nerve, which controls all of these symptoms, we need to focus on getting the stomach or hernia out of the diaphragm, and we won't have these symptoms. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because what she said is really important. So I'm just going to draw a little picture here, and remember that when I stream live, which I am right now, everything's reversed. So don't worry so much about the direction of things. I want to talk about the vagus nerve. So, all right, so if this is your stomach, this line, this is your esophagus, this line coming down like that represents the vagus nerve, okay, and it will branch out throughout the stomach like nerves do, like little roots of a plant, like that. Up here on the esophagus as well, and the intestines. The vagus nerve innervates much of our internal anatomy, including the esophagus and the stomach and the heart and the lungs, and on and on and on. And when you have a hiatal hernia, then the stomach can get folded, it can get twisted, it gets pushed up against the diaphragm, which is up here, right above the stomach. It can put pressure on the vagus nerve of the esophagus as the stomach pushes up into it, and this tiny little hole known as the hiatus, where the esophagus comes through. Now the stomach is pushing through that with your hernia. This can put a tremendous amount of pressure on this nerve, okay? And so when it comes to nerves and pressure being on nerves, this can compromise their nerve function, right? And so the function of the vagus nerve, when it comes to innervating, you know, the digestive system, its function is, one of its functions is digestion, okay? And so when that nerve when it has a lot of pressure on it, ongoing pressure from that hiatal hernia, from that pushing of the stomach up, putting pressure on the stomach, twisting it, folding it, pushing the stomach up into the diaphragm, all of these things can irritate that nerve and cause it to be sensitive, overactive, or even injured and inflamed. And so then it can start to trigger off these different sensations or symptoms, right? Because the body speaks to us through symptoms to let us know that something's not quite right, hopefully so that we will make some type of a change in whatever it is we're doing that's creating this problem, that's creating those symptoms. And so again, the vagus nerve is responsible for digestion. And so with this triggering effect can cause that irritation of the vagus nerve can cause people to be, feel really hungry. They can cause them to feel shaking. It can cause them to be lightheaded. It can even cause them to faint, just to pass out, right? From this irritated vagus nerve due to a hiatal hernia. And so the remedy, the ultimate remedy is to get that stomach down and out of that herniated position, right? So that nerve then can begin to heal and be normal again, so that we don't have the effects from that. The other thing, somebody made a comment, let me find it really quick. I can't find it. Oh, okay, looks like, are we back? Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. Okay, so the other thing, I'm not really sure where that cut out, I apologize. So I was just wrapping up what I wanted to say about the vagus nerve. And let's see. So Bianca mentioned a blood sugar imbalance but also possibly the food getting trapped in the part of the stomach caught above the diaphragm and not getting through when the rest of the digestive system, stomach, small intestine, pancreas, gallbladder, have released their digestive juices to act on it. Okay. Can you guys hear me okay and see me okay? Send me some hearts or some thumbs up if you can. Okay, so depending on your hiatal hernia, and again, everyone's hiatal hernia is different. So if you have a hiatal hernia that's like this would be considered a larger hiatal hernia. So you've got a portion of your stomach under the diaphragm and a portion above the diaphragm, which every hiatal hernia is like that. But in this picture, it's a large portion of the stomach. This is the esophagus. A large portion of the stomach is up in the chest cavity. So again, everyone is different. I mean, some people have their entire stomach in their chest cavity. Some have their stomach and their liver in their chest cavity. I mean, that's extreme, and that's when they would operate. Probably no questions asked. But some people have, maybe half of their stomach, or, a quarter of their stomach, a large portion, not just a little bubble. And so in this situation, the food is coming down and it's coming into here first. So your stomach acid is down here, right? It's down here. So the food has to go into this part, and then it has to slowly make its way through the hiatus and down into the lower part of your stomach. And so in this scenario, digestion is going to take longer. It's going to be slower, which is going to put you at a higher likelihood for bloating. But in this scenario, then, I'm going to make that. In this scenario, like Bianca says, if you've got the food kind of slowly sitting up here and making its way down here, this part of the stomach doesn't know that you just ate a meal, right? And so this part of the stomach is going to start to do what? It's going to do what the stomach does when it's empty and when it thinks that it's time to eat. It's going to do what? It's going to do this, that mechanical contracting that it does, squishing like that. And so that contracting sends a signal to let you feel what? To feel hungry, to feel like you're hungry and you need to eat. So that's good, Bianca. I think that, when it comes to everyone and their different hiatal hernias and their different situations, it could be one of these things that's causing you to have these symptoms, Rachel. It could be a couple of these things. It could be a variety of things. I mean, you may have all three of these things happening. Maybe you're not eating enough carbohydrate, you have a larger hiatal hernia, and you have an irritated vagus nerve. And so that's why you're having maybe lightheadedness, dizziness, and these, cravings, whereas another person with a hiatal hernia is not. Although, in this particular feed of your comment, I see a lot of people are chiming in and saying, yeah, I have that too. All the time, yes, and low blood sugar attack is frightening. Laura comments, it's frightening. So those are three things that you can look at. I mean, your diet, obviously, if you're craving, if you're craving sugar and you haven't had any sugar all day, you're on a low carbohydrate diet. And you have to remember, guys, if you're new to me, when I say the word carbohydrate, a lot of people think of that word as kind of an evil word. It's a bad thing. I'm talking about good carbohydrates. I'm talking about plant foods, which are high in carbohydrate. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, whole grains. These are all high in carbohydrate. They're high carbohydrate foods. I'm not talking about donuts and cupcakes. So you need to get in those carbs. You need to get in plenty of carbs. I know, again, these low carbohydrate diets are really trendy right now. People really like them because they're an effective way to lose weight fast. In my opinion, they're not healthy. Some people seem to do really well on low carbohydrate diets. A lot of people don't. So in general, I would say they're a bad idea. A low carbohydrate is a bad, trendy fad idea. It's best to go on a whole foods plant-based diet and you eat plenty of carbohydrates, and then your brain will be nourished. It needs a lot of glucose, that's its fuel source. And you'll be less likely to have cravings because you'll be meeting those glucose needs. But on top of that, if you have an irritated vagus nerve, that can create that dizziness and lightheadedness. It can create anxiety. It can create panic attacks. It can create the feeling of hunger and more. When it comes to the vagus nerve, it's responsible for a lot of different things. So you have an injured vagus nerve, it can create a lot of different symptoms. And then just also knowing that slowed digestion, if you have a larger hiatal hernia, can also be a culprit. And so at the end of the day, good nutrition and reversing your hiatal hernia, mastering the ability to move that hernia down and then strengthening and tightening your diaphragm as much as you possibly can. Really good, healthy, strong diaphragm. So that stomach can't push up to the hiatus because we've tightened it because it's, a smaller, tighter hole. All right. So that's it. So, that's it. All right. Thank you so much for watching.